And one. Hi, Anirudh. Welcome to this debriefing session. First of all, many congratulations on hitting 750 with a stellar
Yes, yes.
V42 and Q49. How are you feeling? And that too on the very first attempt, right?
Thank you so much, Mr. Yeah. It was the first attempt. I'm feeling great. I mean, uh, feels feels really great. I mean, it's been a long journey.
Absolutely. So, why don't you take us through your GMAT journey, as in from where did you start off, and then what was your very first step? Actually, that's what I'm curious about.
Archit, once I had thought that I will be giving the GMAT exam, the e-GMAT was the first platform which I connected with, and first I
Mhm.
bought a course from e-GMAT itself, and I gave a diagnostic on the first day of preparation to just sort of understand that okay, this is where I'm standing right now.
Mhm. One quick question. You mentioned that e-GMAT was the very first thing that came to your mind. So any specific reason of choosing e-GMAT in like specifically?
Yeah, so my brother had also used this platform,
Oh,
and it had
that's great.
really helped him. It worked really well for him. So he recommended that I use the same.
That's great. So after taking the diagnostic quiz, did you how did you go on from there? Did you create a plan specifically as per the data, or what was your next step then?
Well, so Archit, in fact, I think there was uh, there was a point at which I faltered right at the beginning. So
Mhm.
what typically is suggested generally as well is that first you take a diagnostic and you understand that okay, this
Right.
is exactly where you're standing in terms of each and every element of the test. But what I had done was that I took the test, I saw my initial score, and I did not really evaluate it in depth.
Okay.
And because of that, I think the initial months were not as strategic as they could have been. uh, I was just taking on topics intuitively, whichever I felt that okay, this is something which I should be doing right now, this is something which I should be doing next. But other than that, yes, I did not really touch on each and every topic for the first month or two, but I just kept on picking topics as and when they came.
And that's a very key learning as well, right? Even for a 750 scorer, it probably, do you think that that was one of the reasons why you ended up taking a little longer than what you probably would have taken otherwise?
Yes, Archit, definitely. I mean, I strategic approach which focused on my weak points, then I think my preparation time could have easily been reduced by around 40 to 45 days
Right.
easily.
Right. That's a very, as I said earlier, that's a very key learning that when that the very first step should be to evaluate what are your strengths and weaknesses, and then create a plan that fulfills your requirements, right? It shouldn't be all intuition basis. But that's fine. I think at the end of the day, you ended up doing really well on the GMAT. So after taking the mock, you started with the verbal section, right? Or with the quant section? I think you started off with the quant section. So let's talk about that
Yeah,
first.
yeah.
How did you improve from your initial score? I think you ended up scoring Q42 on the first one, which corresponds to 43%, I'll give or take,
Yeah.
right? And then you ended up scoring Q49 on the actual GMAT. So how did you go about improving from Q42 to Q49?
Well, Archit, like I said, there was not really a lot of improvement in the first 2 months.
Mhm.
However, as time went by, I started figuring out some hacks of Scholaranium which were out there in the open, but I had just not paid a lot of attention to them. So there were a lot of data points, and basis those data points, I started analyzing that data maybe after 2 to 3 months, and then I understood that okay, these are the weak points, and this is what I should be focusing on right now. And before that, what was basically happening was that I was redoing my strong points again and again. Like I know that I have that ability in some specific topic, and yet I was practicing questions in that topic instead of having having that hyper specific focus on the weak areas.
Mhm.
So I think that sort of really went a long way for me, that, just to identify the weak areas and first strengthen them.
Mhm. What I'm also seeing is that you did go through all the learning modules of all the topics. So
Yeah.
how did the expert architecture help you in building the right foundation?
So I would say that something which helped me a lot was the initial diagnostic quiz, because
Mhm.
that allowed me to skip a lot of modules basis my
Right.
initial diagnosis. So if I got 100% in a particular test, I just sort of skipped that entire module, knowing that okay, I have the required ability, and I think that saved a lot of time.
Mhm. So in essence, you were able to personalize your quant preparation as well with the help of these diagnostic quizzes. And in the end, you were able to save a whole lot of your prep time because you knew what exactly you need to cover, and you also knew what exactly you probably are already thorough with, right? And
Yeah, definitely.
once you completed all the learning modules, as a very next step, I think you then went to Scholaranium and you start solving, or you started cementing these concepts.
Yeah. So as and when I was getting done with any topic, I just went on to Scholaranium. I started doing a few cementing quizzes, a few ability quizzes at times, just a mix of those two to like strengthen the concepts which I had already done.
And that's again a very important learning, that as soon as you're done learning concepts of any one topic, you soon cement those concepts. You do not really, let go of that step for the later point of your preparation, because by then whatever concepts you have learned initially, you probably would actually forget. So the very first thing that you need to do after going through all the learning modules and everything is to cement those concepts, and this is exactly what you did as well. Now, after completing all the learning modules for Quant and cementing the concepts, I think that's when you started off with a verbal section, right?
Yeah.
And that's actually a very important learning here as well, if you think about it. You did not really juggle or toggle between verbal and Quant. When you were studying Quant, you were focused only on the Quant. You did not really worry anything about the verbal bit. Once you were done with the Quant section, only then you moved on to the verbal section. And that is again
Yeah,
something
that's
which
right.
is a very, I would say, one thing wherein a lot of students do falter. They tend to, juggle between the two, and at the end of the day they are not able to focus on any of them, and then they end up faltering on both. So yeah, very key learning here too. So how did you start off your preparation on the verbal front?
So Archit, just adding on to something which you already spoke about, I think a lot of students, an error which they very commonly commit is that they just tend to first, they have that mentality that all right, I'll just get done with the course as soon as possible, and then I'll just move on to Scholaranium.
Absolutely.
They think about Scholaranium and coursework as two specific parts of the entire journey which cannot be done together. But I think that that does not let you internalize the learnings, and that just leaves you at a very surface level understanding of the concepts. So just reiterating what you said, I think it worked extremely well for me when I used Scholaranium along with the course modules.
Mhm.
And as far as your question is concerned, uh, first I got done with Quant. Like you said, I internalized my learnings and I cemented them. Then I moved on to verbal, and I started with critical reasoning. So in verbal as well, first I went through the critical reasoning course structure. I used Scholaranium for that, and the cementing quizzes as well.
Mhm.
Then I moved on to RC. I
Mhm.
did the same for that. But while I was doing RC, I was still keeping that brush of critical reasoning at the same time, so that
Mhm.
it just doesn't get too old in my head.
Right.
And once I was comfortable with both of these subtopics, I moved on to SC and did the same with SC.
Mhm. So I have two questions here actually, and you mentioned one very important thing, that you kept in touch with CR, and I have a question for that too. But let me just ask a couple of questions on the CR front. You mentioned that you went through all the learning modules and everything, and then you cemented those concepts as well. How did the CR methodology that we teach in e-GMAT help you with the CR questions in specific?
I would say that firstly, I would like to pinpoint a very common perception with respect to pre-thinking, especially in terms of critical reasoning. So what generally very commonly happens is that there's a huge misconception that pre-thinking wastes your time amongst the students. But what my personal experience with that was that at the initial stages, pre-thinking takes some time. But after a point of time, say after a week or after 2 weeks, it just gets natural to you, and you do not end up wasting time. And that's something which is again and again spoken about in the e-GMAT platform. But a lot of students do not end up implementing that. So yes, I would say that as far as critical reasoning is concerned, pre-thinking was extremely helpful for me, and it does not really take a lot of time initially. Yes, any kind of change or any kind of habit which you're trying to develop, it will take some time in the initial days, but once you are in that flow, I think it can really help boost up the score.
And you mentioned something very, very important, that initially it does take time. And the reason for that is also very
Yeah.
simple, right? It's a foreign skill, I would say. And that is something that you kind of built just for just for GMAT purpose, right? And but that doesn't mean that it will always take forever. Pre-thinking, once you have internalized that process, it will end up taking very little time. So how much time were you taking on an average for pre-thinking? Just an estimate.
um, I think I started off with uh, something around uh, 30 to 35 seconds per question. However, by the time I was really adept at that entire process, I think my pre-thinking was done by the time I was done reading the question. As and when you read the lines,
Hmm, hmm,
just you got into that critical analysis that, okay, this is
absolutely.
probably present for this XYZ reason.
Hmm.
And that's what happens with practice.
So basically, you start doing that unintuitively, right? You don't really have to uh, s- spend any sort of additional time uh, specifically for pre-thinking. You start doing it as you read through the argument itself, or maybe spend 10 or 15 seconds
Yeah.
extra if required, if the passage is very cryptic or very difficult. But it doesn't really take anything more than that. So if you're following the right process, if you are,
Yeah.
if your fundamentals are clear, you can actually ensure that you don't take more than 10 to 15 seconds just for pre-thinking, and you will be able to get there with consistent practice
Yeah.
as well. But it will not happen overnight, right?
Yeah.
So I have another question. So you mentioned that after cementing the critical reasoning and after completing RC as well, or rather while going through RC, you were keeping in touch with critical reasoning just to ensure that your ability doesn't lapses there. So how did you ensure, or how were you revising critical reasoning?
So again, I used Scholaranium for that. Typically, what I used to do was either take another cementing quiz, perhaps take an ability quiz, or at times I used to take the mixed quizzes, which we can make ourselves. So when I
Mhm.
used to take the mixed quizzes, I generally used to avoid the easy level questions. I used to focus on medium and hard levels. And as far as topics are also concerned, I used to be sort of selective so that I end up covering each and every topic at least once in the entire week. So maybe one day I would take 2 3 topics like inferences, and maybe a topic or two along with that, and another day I'll perhaps choose another 3 topics or something like that. So I just sort of rotated the difficulty as well as the topics.
Mm. And actually, I will again go back to CR, and while cementing the CR concepts, while you were taking the cementing quizzes, uh, what was your process that you were following? As in, what did you do right after taking one cementing quiz?
So what I did and what we were, so initially I did not really go exactly by the book, but
Hmm.
after a point of time, say after 20 to 25 days, I started the strategic review, which the folks at e-GMAT also talk about. So what that basically was that I used to take a quiz, and if the quiz takes something like 20 minutes, then I review that quiz for more than 25 minutes. in order to understand that, okay, this is exactly where I went wrong. And what basically that did for me was that instead of just blindly focusing on quantity, my focus went on quality. And there was much more effective and efficient learning.
That's a very key learning, right? That solving questions alone is not something that will help with the improvement. You also need to ensure that you're getting questions correct for the right reasons. And if you're getting any question incorrect, then why did that happen? It's very important to analyze the questions, capture
Yeah.
that information in an error log as well, which I think you also did, right? You were maintaining a very thorough error log as well.
Yeah.
And the beauty of error
Yeah.
log is
Yeah.
that it not only helps you in capturing your learnings and identifying where you're going wrong repeatedly, it also helps you with revision later on. I'm sure you would have used that too while you were
Yes,
revising.
definitely. Definitely. I mean, in the last 10 to 15 days of my preparation, I was just using the error log. I was not really practicing a lot of new questions.
Now, when you were done with RC, right? Were you truly done with RC or were you stuck anywhere?
So I would say that at a personal level, I did most of the things I could. I went through the entire course. In fact, even for critical reasoning and sentence correction, what my personal experience was that, and I have even spoken to you about it. What basically happened was that I reached a particular level of perfection, a particular level of accuracy in each of the questions, but I was not completely satisfied with it. I would say that I had perhaps reached on my own, I had reached that 700 plus level, maybe even 710 or 720 level, but I was really aiming for something more than that, maybe a 750 or 760 level, for which I eventually had to focus on, change my focus from some things to some other things.
So I think after you did RC on the first go, you then moved on to sentence correction as well. Followed the same principle, right?
Yeah,
uh, went
yeah,
through entire stage one as in learning modules and everything. Then you moved on to Scholaranium to cement the concepts. And I think then you took one mock as well and you did fairly well. I think somewhere around 700 too, which is actually a good score. It's not a bad score. It's a really good score. But as you said, as you correctly said that you were not targeting just 700. You wanted something better. And your score was kind of stuck in sentence correction and reading comprehension. So how did you
yeah.
go on from improving, from being, or rather I would say from being good to being really great? And let's talk about sentence correction first. How did you improve there?
So basically, what happened with sentence correction? So this is sometime around 2 to 3 months ago, I think, when I
Hmm.
was really, I was doing fairly well, but I was not personally satisfied with that 700 or 710 score.
Hmm.
And so then I reached out to Payal and I just dropped her a mail saying that, Payal, this is what's happening with me, and I am not really entirely satisfied with my sentence correction and reading comprehension performance. And I just asked her that, can you please guide me, or can anybody at GMAT please help me out?
Hmm.
And to that, Payal very fairly responded, and she just told me that, all right, she has spoken to some folks at e-GMAT and they will be contacting me. So
Right.
then I received a mail from Stacy,
Hmm.
who is the verbal expert. I had a lot of discussions with Stacy on the e-GMAT platform, also which is the doubt solving platform.
So you
In
utilize
fact,
the
that
forum
platform
well.
itself, yeah, yeah, definitely. I think the solving forum itself is extremely useful,
Hmm.
and a lot of the credit of that 750 goes to that doubt solving platform as well, especially for sentence correction. But other than that, yes, once Pyle got me in touch with Stacy, I think my interaction with Stacy was a game changer. I mean, before I had contacted Stacy, sentence correction was something which I personally struggled a little with. If I took 12 questions in sentence correction, I got something like 6 to 7 right.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
uh, I just had around 3 to 4 interactions with Stacy over mail,
Hmm.
and she just asked me what kind of things I was faltering on.
Hmm.
She recommended me some changes.
Hmm.
Her guidance was primarily directional in nature. I mean, she did not really. tell me specific rules of grammar or rules of sentence correction or something like that. But she just told me that, okay, you are focusing your energies on the grammar aspect of questions, and I want you to divert that focus from grammar to the meaning based approach aspect of the questions. And I would say that that was a game changer for me. I mean, just 3 to 4 interactions with Stacy, perhaps 2 to 3 hours of work which Stacy had recommended did me more benefit than 2 months of sentence correction. And I think, yes, that was a major booster for me, both in terms of my preparation and in terms of confidence.
So basically, I mean, you had already gone through the SC learning module, so you are already very well thorough with all the grammar rules and everything. Just that
Yeah.
you are not focusing enough on the meaning. And again, I think this is something that a lot of students do. They think that SC is all about grammar, and they analyze the question and the answer choices from the through the lens of SC rules or grammar rules, I would say. And that's one big mistake. And Stacey helped you correct that approach altogether. She told you that it is actually the meaning, right? Meaning is the king in sentence correction, and everything has to be about meaning.
Yeah.
Grammar is just a tool for communicating that intended meaning. And then
Yeah.
you were able
Yeah.
to improve
So
from, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
please go ahead.
No, so
So
and
I
then
was
I think
saying that like
you first,
should
please.
I
Yeah,
yeah. So I'll just add on to what I was saying, and like you said, I will just add a little to that. uh, a lot of non-native speakers especially,
Hmm.
they end up focusing too much on grammar. And what perhaps happened with me was exactly the same thing. Before my meeting with Stacy, I was very underconfident about the extent of knowledge I had with regards to the grammar aspect. But
Hmm.
after 2 3 email conversations with her, I ended up realizing that, okay, I knew way too much grammar, and I had already focused way too much on the grammar aspect.
Hmm.
So for all the other students as well who are preparing, this is a key takeaway which changed my personal entire, uh, which was a definite game changer for me, that do not focus a lot on grammar, because that is not what the test is trying to test you on. What the test is trying to test you on is effective communication. And yes, meaning is paramount, definitely paramount for sentence correction.
You have put in so beautifully that GMAT is not testing you on the grammar rules. It's testing you on the effective communication. And if you think about it, right, it's not just for SC, I would say. Entire GMAT is so logical, be it critical reasoning, be it SC. Again, even in SC, it's all about the intended meaning, the intended logical meaning, I would say. RC is no different than that, right? So after
Yeah.
working with Stacy under the exact program, right? You are part of the exact program.
Yeah.
You then shifted your focus to your another weakness, which was reading comprehension. And so how did you go on improving in reading comprehension?
So Archit, what happened with reading comprehension with me was that it was again something which was directional in nature. I had again contacted Payal saying that I need some help with reading comprehension, and she told me that, okay, if you need some help, we will definitely try to guide you through the entire process. And she told Harsha to talk to me, and
Mhm.
Harsha dropped me an email. And again, the conversation with Harsha was also primarily through mails. He was just again giving me directional changes. But uh, what Harsha basically did was that, like you said, GMAT uh, GMAT values meaning more than anything else,
Mhm.
and that's what I was sort of missing out in the RC component as well.
Mhm.
And that's what Harsha worked on. And just in addition to that, I think uh, only on the basis of data, Harsha was able to exactly pinpoint what I needed to change. And once I
Mhm.
changed that, it really helped me out. So I, again, just reiterating something which I had said previously, the data which is available with Scholaranium, with e-GMAT, and the kind of usage of data which Harsha did,
Mhm.
that was in fact something which really opened a lot of different possibilities for me, because that could very effectively help me point out the exact weakness. And basis that, I just worked on those areas, and I think my RC score improved in 6 to 7 days,
So I
something
have
around that.
two questions. So what was your approach before, and then how did your approach change later on?
What we did was, basically Harsha just mailed me saying that, okay, do one question and just write down the timings for your reading duration, each and every question, and just put in a short line telling the rationale for
Hmm,
which you selected XYZ option. I sent him
hmm,
that,
hmm,
and right away he told me that I'm spending too much time on questions and too little
hmm,
time in reading the passage. And that again is something which a lot of test takers falter on. There are 10 to 15 different strategies on taking questions which are out there
right.
on the internet,
Hmm,
and everybody says that their strategy is the best. But I have been through the process. I think I have tried around 4 to 5 different strategies, and I ended up concluding that, okay, meaning based and passage understanding is by far the most efficient. And by efficient, I mean that, okay, there might be some other strategy which can again give you same answers, but if you want to crack the 750 or 760 level questions,
hmm,
then for that you need to have that level of in-depth analysis of passage,
hmm,
and that is simply not possible until and unless you spend 4 minutes or 4.5 minutes on that.
hmm,
Unless and until, yes, you are an extremely good reader, you're a genius at RC, then
hmm,
yes, maybe you can have that same level of understanding in 2.5 to 3 minutes.
hmm.
But for any average person, reading it for 4.5 minutes is a must do. And in fact, for me, after being through the entire process, I would say it's rather a thumb rule that you need to spend 4 or 4.5 minutes in the passage.
So basically, what you were doing earlier was that you were spending 2.5 minutes on just skimming through the passage. I would say not inferring,
Yeah.
not driving out the right inferences at the right points. And because you had just skimmed through so quickly, you ended up spending like 1.5 or maybe 2 minutes on the rest of the RC questions. But later on, what you started
Yeah.
doing was you started spending a little bit more time on comprehending the passage, right, driving out the inferences or at the right points, asking the right questions also while reading the RC passage. And by the time you were done with reading the passage, you were so clear with the entire passage that you started saving a whole lot of time in the rest of the RC questions, right?
Yeah, definitely. In fact, an addition to that point, I myself had this preconceived notion that if I spend too much time on the passage, I will end up spending too much time in the entire RC section. And everybody has that paucity of time with respect to the verbal part of the test. And
Mhm.
people think that, okay, spending too much time in the passage will end up creating that element of restlessness towards the end of the test. But in my personal experience, once I started spending around 4.5 minutes in the passage, I could do each and every question in 30 to 40 seconds. And
Wow.
that effectively, in fact, reduced my overall question time by a minute and a half. Like if I took 9 minutes initially for 4 questions,
Mm,
after implementing the new strategy, I was taking around 7.5 minutes. But again, you need to give this new strategy time.
mm,
It needs to build on you. Initially, yes, the question will take more time. The answer
mhm,
choices will take more time. But
mm.
perhaps in 7 days, 8 days, you will start reducing that time aspect and increasing that accuracy aspect.
And you have so beautifully captured that, right? That until and unless you you're able to comprehend the passage in the right fashion, you will not be able to get the rest of the questions in the right amount of time. You'll end up spending way more time than what you should ideally do. So again, just as in SC, even in RC, I would say comprehension is the king, not the meaning here, because you're not analyzing questions passage on the sentence to sentence basis, but you need to comprehend what's really going on, and you need to ensure that you are getting immersed in the passage. So by the time you were done with SC
Yeah,
and
yeah.
RC in the exact program, I think your your scores also improved tremendously. At one point, you mentioned that you were getting like 6 or 7 questions correct out of 12 in SC, and it improved to what? I think 11 or 12, right? That's what you mentioned earlier.
Yeah. So in fact, the first test which I took after speaking to Stacy, before I had spoken to Stacy, I got 6 out of 12 correct in my last mock. And the first test which I took after that, I got 12 out of 12 correct. So I
Wow.
mean, there was a drastic change. SC was my weakest point
Mhm.
until I had spoken to Stacy, and after that, I started getting an accuracy of 11 or 12. And in fact, the time also really reduced. I was able to do each and every question in under 1 minute. So
Wow.
that was saving a lot of time for RC and critical reasoning.
And that improved from what? What was your average time earlier for sentence correction?
My average time before that was something around 1 minute 30 seconds, 1 minute 45 seconds, and that came down to 55 seconds to 1 minute 5 seconds.
Wow. So there was an improvement. I would say you almost reduce your time by 40%, at least 40-45%. And that again would have ensured that you have sufficient time for
Yeah,
CR or RC as well. Not that you needed that, you were anyway you were anyway improved on RC too. But that's a tremendous improvement, not just on the accuracy front, but even on the timing front as well. You're there spot on. Uh, and after completing all of that, I think that's when you took another mock. You scored really well on the official mocks as well.
yeah. So just in addition to that, the SC point which you said,
Right.
I had previously mentioned that sentence correction was a game changer for me, and
Mm-hmm.
that is precisely the reason it was a game changer. So after my conversation with Stacy, I think she was the directional change which she had suggested. It worked fantastically for me, and at the same time, she kept checking up as well. Like, even if I did not mail her, she kept checking up on my sentence correction progress, my even my RC and CR progress. So because of that, even if I had certain doubts or something like that, I could always just simply mail her, and she would probably respond within 3-4 hours or something like that. But yes, at the end of the entire exercise, what basically happened was with me was that the number of correct options, correct questions increased by
Mm-hmm.
5 or 6 in SC itself.
Mm-hmm.
And I had around 6 to 7 extra minutes for
Mm-hmm.
RC and critical reasoning. And anybody who's doing who's taking the GMAT understands how important 6 to 7 minutes are.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely.
So
It could be, as you're calling it,
yeah,
could be game
so
changer.
because of that, yeah, definitely. So yes, basis that, once I implemented these changes, especially the ones which Stacy recommended, I worked on the suggestions which Harsha made,
Hmm.
and my score improved from a 720 to a 760 right in the next mock.
And next one. That's a fantastic improvement as well, and that improvement also happened over a very short period of time. So again, proving that if you're following the right processes, not only your accuracy would be in place, but your timing too would be in place. Just that it will not happen overnight. You need to give yourself some time and have faith in the process as well, right? Because if you don't trust it, I think
Yeah,
nothing can
yeah,
never work.
definitely.
Nothing can possibly ever work for you. Uh, and
Yeah.
then I think you just went ahead, took GMAT and scored a fabulous 750. So do you have any tips or anything for our viewers as well who are, who will be taking GMAT soon?
Um, I would just say one thing that I think this is something which is universally present, that we just have a lot of skepticism with respect to each and every strategy which has been taught to us. And that is something which I had as well. The RC strategy with Harsha told me, the sentence correction strategy which Stacy suggested, the in fact even the critical reasoning strategy, which was the pre-thinking strategy, I did not strictly follow any of these three for the first 3 to 4 months of my preparation. And I think this happens, this is the journey of each and every test taker, that they resist this for the first 3 to 4 months, and they eventually end up embracing these same strategies. And just by experience, I am someone who has been through the process. So anybody who's watching this, I would just say that you need to trust these things, because the people who are suggesting this are experts in their fields and they have taught thousands of students.
Mhm.
So instead of having that skepticism, just try to embrace these approaches as soon as you can, because that will save you a lot of time. Looking back, I think that if I had just done that same change 3 months ago, I would have appeared for my GMAT in a preparation time of 30 to 40 days.
And it
But
was all there on the
nonetheless,
platform
you have
anyway,
this
right?
platform, you have this video. Yeah, exactly. So just embrace these strategies and don't be skeptical about them, and just trust the process.
Right. Uh, so beautifully captured that. I mean, learning anything new, right? It kind of gives that sort of hesitation that whether it will work or not. If it's not working on the first try or on the first attempt, it will probably never work. And that is something that, I mean, it's natural to have those kinds of thoughts, but just trust the process, right? And you have very correctly said that these are tried and tested processes as well. It has helped thousands of students, so it will work for you as well. Just give it some time and have some faith in it as well. Thanks a lot, Anirudh, for connecting with us and sharing your journey with all of us. Thanks a lot, and good luck with the applications as well.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.